They did not plan to say any of it. That is the part that made it newsworthy. Not the intentional walk itself. Intentional walks happen in baseball every single day. They are written into the strategy of the game the way punctuation is written into a sentence. Expected. Functional. Unremarkable. But what happened after this one was different. Four players, in 4 separate moments, said something they were not prepared to say. Something unscripted. Something that came out before the filter could catch it. And when the U.S. media got hold of those words, the conversation that followed had very little to do with baseball strategy and almost everything to do with what it actually feels like to share a field with Shohei Ohtani. The intentional walk happened in the middle of a game that was already tense. The count did not matter. The inning did not matter. What mattered was the decision that the opposing manager made when Ohtani stepped into the batter's box, and the situation on the base paths made the calculus simple. Do not let him beat you. Put him on first. Take your chances with the next hitter. It is the correct decision, by every measurable standard of baseball logic. It is the decision that managers across the league have been making with increasing frequency since Ohtani became the version of himself that he is now. It is, in that sense, a compliment disguised as a refusal. But standing close to it, watching it happen from the field rather than from a broadcast booth or a press box, is apparently a different experience entirely. For members of the Dodgers found that out in the moments that followed. Will Rushing was behind the plate. That is the most important detail in this entire story. Because a catcher's relationship to an intentional walk is unlike anyone else's on the field. He is not watching from the dugout. He is not positioned 60 feet away in the infield. He is crouched directly behind the hitter, close enough to hear breathing, close enough to see the way a player's hands settle on the bat, close enough to observe everything that a television camera cannot capture at that distance. Rushing had called games all season. He had been behind the plate for significant moments. He was not, by any reasonable description, a person who could be easily surprised by what happens inside a baseball game. And yet, when asked about the intentional walk after the game, Rushing paused before answering. Not a long pause. 3, maybe 4 seconds. The kind of pause that happens when someone is deciding how honest to be with a room full of reporters. He decided to be honest. He said that from where he was positioned, watching the opposing catcher stand and the pitcher loft 4 wide ones toward the outside corner, he found himself looking at Ohtani the entire time. Not at the ball. Not at the catcher. At Ohtani. He said Ohtani did not move. Not in the way that most hitters shift their weight or exhale slowly or let their shoulders drop slightly when they realize they are not going to get a pitch to hit. Ohtani simply stood there. Completely still. Watching each ball go by with an expression that Rushing described, after a short search for the right words, as almost unbothered. Then Rushing said the thing that the U.S. media could not stop replaying. He said it was the stillness that got him. That he had seen a lot of hitters get intentionally walked, and most of them, even the great ones, showed you something in those 4 pitches. A flicker of frustration. A slight tension in the jaw. Something that told you the pitcher's decision had registered emotionally as well as tactically. Ohtani showed him nothing. And somehow, Rushing said, that was more intimidating than anything else he could have shown. Mookie Betts was in the dugout when it happened. He was standing near the railing, in the way that players sometimes stand when they are watching something closely without wanting to appear to be watching closely. Arms folded. Weight back. Eyes forward. Betts has been in baseball long enough to have seen every variation of every situation the game produces. He has played in playoff games and World Series games and All-Star games. He has stood in the batter's box against the best pitchers in the world and delivered in moments that required everything he had. His perspective on what constitutes remarkable is calibrated at an extremely high level. Which is exactly why what he said afterward carried the weight that it did. A reporter asked him, somewhat casually, what it was like watching the intentional walk from the dugout. The question was not designed to produce a revelation. It was the kind of question that fills space at the end of a press session, the kind that usually generates a polite and unmemorable answer. Betts did not give a polite and unmemorable answer. He said that he had been watching Ohtani's face. That from the dugout, at that angle, you could see his expression clearly during all 4 pitches. And what Betts saw was something he described as almost philosophical. He said it looked like Ohtani was watching the situation from the outside rather than experiencing it from the inside. He paused there. Then he added the line that made the room pay closer attention. He said he did not know anyone else who could make an intentional walk look like the other team was doing him a favor. The reporters wrote that down. Tommy Edman saw it from second base. His vantage point was lateral rather than direct. He was watching the scene from the side, the way you might watch something significant happen on a street you happen to be walking down. Not head-on. Not from a distance. From close enough to be part of the atmosphere but far enough to see the whole picture at once. Edman is not someone who speaks in large gestures. He tends toward the precise and the understated. His value to the Dodgers is partly physical and partly about the particular calmness he brings to situations that would agitate a less settled player. So when Edman said what he said, the simplicity of it landed harder because of who was saying it. He told the reporter that the thing which stayed with him was the walk to first base after the 4th ball. Most players, when they receive an intentional walk in a meaningful situation, carry something in their body language as they move toward first. Relief, sometimes. Frustration, occasionally. The mechanical loosening of a body that was coiled for competition and is now being redirected. Edman said Ohtani walked to first base the way someone walks to a meeting they scheduled. No drama. No release. Just movement from one place to the next. He said it was one of the stranger things he had witnessed in a baseball game. Not because it was strange behavior, but because it made Edman realize that Ohtani had already processed the intentional walk before the pitcher even stood up to signal it. That somewhere in the at-bat, before the decision was communicated, Ohtani had seen it coming and had simply decided it was acceptable. Edman said that is not how hitters normally think. He said most hitters want the pitch. They believe, until the last possible moment, that they are going to get something to hit. That belief is part of what makes great hitters dangerous. Ohtani, Edman suggested quietly, might have moved past needing that belief a long time ago. Max Muncy was the last to speak. He had waited until most of the other reporters had cycled through their questions. He was sitting in front of his locker with the particular looseness of someone who has already completed the physical part of a long day and is now just letting the mental part catch up. When the question reached him, he smiled first. Not a large smile. A small one. The kind that appears when someone finds something genuinely amusing in retrospect even though it was not amusing in the moment. He said that the thing nobody talks about with an intentional walk is what it does to the hitter who comes up next. That the pitcher who issues the walk is sending a very specific message. They are saying that they would rather face you than face the person who just walked to first. They are saying, in the clearest possible terms, that you are the lesser threat. Muncy said he knew that intellectually. He had known it for years. But standing in the on-deck circle, watching Ohtani receive 4 wide pitches and move to first base without a word, and then walking to the plate knowing that the pitcher had chosen him over Ohtani on purpose, was different from knowing it intellectually. He said it felt like getting picked last. Even though it was not his fault and even though he understood the logic and even though he was a professional baseball player with years of experience who had hit important home runs in important moments. It still felt, in that specific instant, like getting picked last. The room laughed slightly. Muncy smiled again. But the laugh settled quickly, because everyone in the room understood that Muncy was not really making a joke. He was describing what it is like to exist in the same sport as Shohei Ohtani. What it is like to stand close to that particular gravity and feel it pull at everything around it, including your own sense of where you stand in the order of things. 4 players. 4 separate conversations. For moments of candor that none of them had entirely planned. The U.S. media spent the following day replaying those words in various combinations, examining them from different angles, asking what they revealed about Ohtani and what they revealed about the players who said them. But the most honest answer is simpler than any analysis. They revealed that being close to something extraordinary, close enough to see it without a camera between you and it, changes the way you talk about it afterward. Rushing saw the stillness. Betts saw the philosophy. Edman saw the acceptance. Muncy felt the gravity. And Ohtani walked to first base and stood there quietly, already thinking about the next at-bat. As he always does.